Extinct Reptiles by Liana Jaffer. The long, successful reign of reptiles is one of the most spectacular phases in the history of biological evolution. During that period, reptiles dominated and ruled over the whole animal kingdom for nearly 180 million years. This glorious period in the history of life is described as the Age of Reptiles. It includes the Permian period of the Paleozoic era and the Triassic, Jurassic, and the Cretaceous periods of the Mesozoic era. The prominent groups of reptiles which once dominated and ruled over land, air, and water includes the mammal-like reptiles and the Mesozoic reptiles. Mammal-like reptiles. They actually include the ancestors of mammals which form a connecting link which bridges the gap between primitive reptiles and early mammals. Among the earlier forms, their teeth were modified into four types as in mammals. In later forms, this trend reached a high level of dental specialization. Mammal-like reptiles belongs to three major groups, namely Pelycosaura, Therapsida, and Ichthyosauria. Pelycosaura. These are the most ancient of all mammal-like reptiles. Some of them were primitive, long-bodied, and partly aquatic carnivores, for example, Ophiocodon. But more enterprising forms were powerful carnivores, well adapted for a terrestrial life, for example, Dimetrodon, Sphenocodon, etc. Dimetrodon had a remarkable 60 centimeter to 1 meter high sail-like structure on back formed of enormously elongated neural spines. Still other pelycosaurs were herbivores. Some of them, such as edaphosaurs, had a sail on the back. The forms with sail were not in the direct line of mammalian ancestry. Pelycosaurs were relatively little advanced from the cotylosaurian condition, and they doomed to the extinction around the middle of Permian period. Pterodactyls are the true mammal-like reptiles. They show a pelycosaurian ancestry and are supposed to be reptiles which took their road to mammals. Some of them almost approached the stage of mammalian organization, and in them, teeth were modified into four functional types as in mammals. In some others, the skull was diplocondylion with two occipital condyles. In more advanced forms, there was a secondary palate below the primary reptilian palate. Among Therapsida, the theridons are more mammal-like and they are supposed to be directly ancestral to mammals. They are mostly insectivores or carnivores, but some later forms were herbivores. Theridons appeared in the Middle Permian period and vanished in the Upper Triassic period. Ichthyosauria. Ichthyosauria fill the gap between theridons and earliest mammals, so they stand on the borderline between theridon reptiles and earliest mammals. At the same time, some of them followed independent and specialized lines of evolution in the direction of mammals. For example, tritylodons were rodent-like. Even though the reptiles evolved during the Paleozoic era, they became the dominant organisms in the Mesozoic era. This Mesozoic era is known as the Golden Age of reptiles. The prominent groups in the Mesozoic era are the following: Ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, archosaurs. The archosaurs include thecodons, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. Ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs are known as the lords of water. Ichthyosaurs are fully marine fish-like forms. They had paddled and fish-like paired limbs modified for swimming, dorsal and caudal fins, and a fish-like shape. They were fish hunters armed with elongated and beak-like stout and sharp teeth. They were the most dominant creatures of the Mesozoic seas. They appeared during the Triassic period and were dominant in the Jurassic period and finally eclipsed in the Cretaceous period. Plesiosaurs. Plesiosaurs were large, more than 12 meter long, marine reptiles with broad body and paddled and oar-shaped limbs. Among them, there were shock-necked forms, pliosaurs, and long-necked forms. Long-necked forms are commonly called swan dragons. Elasmosaurus are example for swan dragons. These group extended during the Cretaceous period. Archosaura. These group of extinct reptiles were called ruling reptiles. They included techodons, crocodilians, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. They conquered all types of environments except the water and were dominant during the Mesozoic era. These Archosaurian members were diapsids. They had two temporal openings in the skull, and among them there was a strong tendency for the evolution of bipedality, walking with two legs. Some of them were completely bipedal, and some others were secondarily reverted to quadrupedality, and some other members had the power of flight. Tecodons, stem of ruling reptiles. Tecodons, more specifically the Pseudozoians, are the most primitive archosaurs. They form the ancestral stock from which the later ruling reptiles evolved. Early tecodons were small, bipedal, fast running carnivores, but some of the later forms became large and secondarily quadrupedal. Pterosaurs. Pterosaurs, commonly called the flying dragons, were toothed and tailed flying reptiles. Their endoskeleton was modified in a manner analogous to that of birds. Their bones were thin, light, and hollow and air-filled. In some later forms, teeth were absent but beak was present. The wings of pterosaurs were membranous or patagial, supported by the elongated fourth digit of the forelimb. Forms like Rhamphorhynchus and Pteranodon were highly specialized and had enlarged wings. Pterosaurs emerged in the Triassic and became extinct towards the end of the Cretaceous period. Their extermination was mainly due to the emergence of highly specialized flying birds, which had more perfect and highly efficient flying mechanisms. Of all the animals of the remote past, dinosaurs are perhaps the most spectacular creatures, especially noted for their giant size. However, not all dinosaurs were giant beasts. Some were hardly bigger than a hen. Dinosaurs are of two major groups: the lizard like dinosaurs known as saurischians and the bird like dinosaurs known as ornithischians. These two groups probably took independent origin from a common bipedal techodon ancestral stock during the Triassic period. From a modest beginning in the early Triassic, they evolved in size and specializations, enjoyed wide distribution, became the mighty lords of the land, and finally suffered a sudden and dramatic extinction. Saurischians. Saurischians were reptile-like dinosaurs. Early forms were bipedal carnivores, similar to ancestral tecodons. From them, there evolved two divergent groups, namely Theropoda and Sauropoda. Earliest theropods were bipedal carnivores. From them, several specialized lines evolved. The most important groups among them were the ostrich dinosaurs and the terran dinosaurs. Ostrich dinosaurs were ostrich like in size and build. They were fast running bipeds with hollow bones and large forelimbs. Their hind limbs were of bird like. Example Struthiomimus. Tyrant dinosaurs were large sized, flesh eating bipeds. Example Tyrannosaurus deinodon. Tyrannosaurus, commonly called the tyrant dinosaur, was provided with large jaws and numerous flat, saw edged, and dagger like teeth. This huge beast is considered as the most formidable animate engine of destruction ever existed on Earth. Sauropods were herbivorous and secondary quadrupedal forms and probably the largest and the heaviest of all dinosaurs. Typical sauropods were huge animals with tiny head, lumbering body and long neck and tail. Example Diplodocus. Ornithischians were highly varied bird-like dinosaurs. They were all herbivores. Some of them were bipeds and other secondarily reverted forms were quadrupeds. There were four groups of Ornithischian dinosaurs, namely Ornithopoda, Stegosauria, Ankylosauria, and Ceratopsia. Ornithopods were the earliest and the most primitive bird-like dinosaurs. They were digitigrade bipeds, example Iguanodon. More specialized forms were the duck-billed dinosaurs. They had long and flat jaws, modified into beak or bill. They are believed to be the amphibious forms. Stegosaurians were quadrupeds with a unique armor of plates and spines. Their tail was armed with two pairs of formidable spikes, apparently making the tail a dangerous lashing weapon. Example Stegosaurs. The relative inability or incompetence of these animals to properly adjust with the changes in the topographic, climatic, and floral conditions caused their great extinction.